U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has visited Kyiv and announced details of a $400 million aid package for Ukraine. Monday's announcement came just 2 weeks before a presidential election that could further put aid in doubt. During the visit, a Russian bombardment hit the eastern city of Pokrovsk, killing 3 people. Moscow is slowly advancing toward the city, a key transportation hub that could open further advances in the area. Our correspondent Max Zander visited the frontline city to talk to its defenders and see the devastation caused by Russia's advance.
On the outskirts of Pokrovsk,
Armata!
This group of men has been working their howitzers since the break of dawn.
They say that artillery is the god of war. It causes 90% of the damage that's inflicted on the enemy.
But the Russians have more firepower and more people. Pressure on this part of the front line is intense.
Armata!
Russian infantry groups keep advancing, as seen in this footage captured by a Ukrainian surveillance drone. It's broadcast live to the command post. Back on the ground, we seek shelter as the unit prepares for potential retaliatory fire. It's been a busy morning.
We drove the enemy back. Some were killed, some were hiding. We shot at them. Those who stayed more or less alive ran away. We shot at them too.
Commander Vasil is determined to defend Pokrovsk.
They won't take it. They won't take Pokrovsk. Because if they do, it will be bad. The road will be open and the Russians will have a direct path to Dnipro.
This is the city they're defending. Trains stopped working weeks ago. The lack of power and water, as well as Russian shelling, have driven people out.
Pokrovsk once was home to 60,000 people, and during the war it became an important hub for the military. Soldiers would come here to take a break from the front lines.
Those days are long gone.
That's where the Druzhba Hotel was. And over there was the Corleone Pizzeria. In 2023, enemy rockets hit there for the first time.
The Druzhba Hotel was attacked last year. Volodymyr's commander was among those killed. In a residential neighborhood, we can see the result of a recent Russian attack, purportedly caused by a glide bomb.
We found one man dead in his bed. He had gone to sleep, and his house received a direct hit. The adjacent buildings and structures caught fire. The blaze covered 400 square meters.
Russian attacks on the city center have decreased slightly, because Ukrainians have sent reinforcements to the outskirts of the city. They take most of the fire. We're back at the position. A new batch of shells just arrived. But it's a drop in the ocean. Ukrainian troops say they barely receive enough military aid to hold on to their positions, and certainly not enough to change the course of the war. Negotiating peace with Russia, like some are calling for, cannot be the answer, says the commander.
If Zelensky gives up the territory that was seized, in 2 years, we will have to go to war again. The Russians are constantly being re-equipped. They're producing shells every day. What about us? Give us shells, Europe.
As we head back to the city, we make a stop at a brand new trench. It's one of many dug in the area around Pokrovsk, and a potential foreshadowing of battles to come.
That report, we should mention, by DW correspondent Max Zander, who joins us now from Kyiv. Max, an interesting report. The soldiers you talk to say they need more firepower, but they're not getting it. How confident are they that they can hold Pokrovsk?
Yes, good morning, Michael. So from the overall sentiment from our recent trip to that part, to these outskirts of Pokrovsk, talking to soldiers there, is that the situation at the moment is serious, it is difficult, but for the moment, at least, it seems it is manageable. The Russians are still 7 to 8 kilometers away from the eastern outskirts of Pokrovsk. The Ukrainians have sent additional brigades, from what we've been hearing, 2 to 3 brigades, around 10,000 troops, to support the defense of the city. The Ukrainian troops have dug in there. Now, the Russians are increasing the pressure on that part of the front line, also towards the north and the south. And it seems that at the moment they're not going for Pokrovsk in a direct line, but rather moving south of the city, trying to, so to say, solidify the southern front and potentially then later on try to encircle it and drive Ukrainian troops out of the city, similar to what we've seen in other cities in the Donbas region, for example, in Avdiivka or Vuhledar recently. So if you talk to soldiers there, you have soldiers who say, of course, we're going to hold on to Pokrovsk. There's no other option. But then there are also others who we talk to who are less optimistic, who are seeing this as potentially the next bloody urban combat scenario, similar to what we've seen in Avdiivka or in Bakhmut.
It bears reiterating Pokrovsk is seen as a key strategic town. What would happen if it does fall?
So I think it's important to mention that summer here in Ukraine is certainly over. Winter is on its way. That means it's going to get a lot more cold. The situation on the front line is going to change. The front line is going to turn into a muddy wasteland sooner or later. There's going to be less daylight. This makes it a lot more difficult for any type of offensive. So if the Russians decide to go to Pokrovsk, which they are likely going to do, it's going to result in a lot of casualties. Also, trying to take a city as on the offensive in winter, it's going to result in casualties for the Russians, for the Ukrainians as well, but even more so for the Russians, especially looking at how the tactics that they apply, throwing everything they have at the defenders. If Pokrovsk falls, Pokrovsk is an important logistics hub. They have a train line that is partially still working. There is a highway that goes directly to the Dnipropetrovsk region. The Ukrainians used the city to supply parts of the front line from there, so that's going to be a blow to their logistics, and they would have to change their game up a little bit. The Russians would have captured higher ground from which they can launch artillery strikes, drone strikes in the area, but most importantly, Pokrovsk is a major city. 60,000 people used to live there. It would be another major city taken by the Russians, and this would be a major blow to the Ukrainian leadership and to the morale in the country.
A commander in your report made it clear he doesn't believe Russia can hold peace talks with Ukraine in good faith. But of course, Ukraine could lose a major ally if there's a new leadership in Washington after the U.S. election. How worried are soldiers about that?
I mean, we talked to soldiers about this on the ground, and it seems that they're, of course, following what's happening in the United States, but if you're fighting on the front line, you don't have the capacity to look into the details there. What's more important for them is how this translates to the situation on the ground. Is the pickup truck with the shells going to arrive? Are we going to have, or are they going to have enough armored vehicles for their assault troops? Is there going to be HIMARS working to protect the troops? Are they going to be able to, most importantly, in future, strike within Russian territory to make a real difference? Because what they've been telling us is that what they have been getting so far is enough to barely hold on, but not to make a difference. And even with calls for negotiations abroad, but also here in Ukraine, in order to be able to negotiate, none of the sides can, or the opposing side cannot have the upper hand. So you need a good negotiating position, and that's essentially what they're looking at, what the support in future is going to look like.
That's DW's Max Zander reporting from Kyiv. Many thanks, Max.